Yeah, well, there are certainly some folks who believe and are doing what they can to support this development because they think it's the most likely thing to happen. Is that um, in time, most farms are going to be fairly enormous in size, largely corporate owned or run, just because it will take so much capital to make them go. And that's just where it's going. Small farms will disappear, or they'll be so irrelevant.
Right.
It's that greatly increase the number of small farms, but still to be a drop in the bucket for food production.
Right.
And that's the argument there. There are a lot of folks who are trying to save or promote, further develop small and medium-sized farms before those are all lost.
And there is a growth. 17%, I think it said last year the growth was, and then a 9% decrease in large farms. So.
Right, and that's an interesting thing. Trying to bring some people into agriculture, I think, is going to be very good. We've been trying to sustain people on the land, and I understand the difficulties. If you're a small farm, you simply have to be selling something that's of high value or have the farm as a second income.
Right.
There's just that reality there. And the medium-sized farms are really stuck. And the big ones are so big that...
So why are they stuck? Yeah,
well,
I'm curious.
They're big enough that they usually can't focus or don't focus on high-value crops anymore. And yet they don't have the acre base to get by with the fairly small net returns that are out there for
because it's commodity
crops.
Based. Yeah.
If you look at the average returns, and clearly some people are beating the averages, but the average returns give you pause when you see average returns of $10 or $12 an acre. Well, do the math.
Wow.
You want to make $50,000 a year? How many acres do you need? It's really quite impressive. And so I can't argue with people who are out there farming and say, hey, I got to have some more acres. I can't make it like this. And those few that cut to a smaller farm, higher value scenario, it makes a lot of sense. And the middle-sized farm is it's just caught in between. It's a little too big to do high-value crops or
Sure.
with a lot of management, and it's a little too small to really stay with commodities unless you're really an excellent manager.
Right.
There are some folks out there, but most of us need to work on that because margins are thin, so we just have to be that much better.
Yeah, sure enough. I hear you for sure. What do you think it is as far as the commoditization of certain crops? Is it balanced correctly? Like, are we putting because a lot of times commodity prices are based on demands that sometimes are artificially created or artificially supported, right? So are there situations where that's happening, where we could see a shift in policy that would drastically change or even somewhat change what's going on with those types of farms?
Oh, well, yeah, I know there's a lot of argument there, and I don't have a perfect answer, certainly.
Well, I'm looking for the perfect answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I support all the farmers that I can to keep somebody moving.
Sure.
I think small and medium-sized farms could probably do better if there were federal programs that were aimed at helping them. And there are some. And there are certainly some state programs too. The biggest thing I think that most of us on the small end need is business management. I've seen people running their books, and for every excellent business manager, there are probably 5 or 6 of us that aren't that good. And frequently it's the people who got their calculator and pen out who are the ones really keeping track of costs, are the ones that are able to squeeze out those extra few dimes. In the larger picture, I question a lot of what goes on from the federal support side of things. Government support programs in many parts of the world have usually were out there to mean well. and oftentimes end up with these unanticipated results that are frequently more negative than good.
Yeah.
And
are there situations like that here
in our country?
Yeah.
Well, we, in order to support farmers as a group, we went at the major commodities because that's what most people were growing, and we support those major commodities to the point where,
like wheat and corn and
cotton, soybeans I think is still in there. I believe there are quite a few others as well. Those aren't the only crops. If we want to have a crop rotation, it would be nice if there was something to help make ends meet while you were going through a crop like oats,
mm-hmm.
a crop like alfalfa, some of the other alternative crops, so that a person could feel that as they went through some sort of crop rotation, that would be good for their soil, and maybe make them a little more time efficient. They'd have the same sort of level of support all the way through. Of course, ideally, in a sustainable scenario, we would make enough money that we didn't need any outside input, because some question whether that's sustainable farming anyway. And that's a reasonable debate we should probably have too.
Yeah. And when you say outside inputs, you mean different things like?
Well, in this case, the economic inputs, where the federal government's going to come in and give me a check for growing a crop.
Right.
Well, that's fabulous while the government can do that, and while it doesn't change markets so much that it makes it crazy to farm. Okay.
Right. But that's already happened.
But
so yeah, we're talking about the present.
Right.
Not a hypothetical here, especially with corn and certain things like that.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen the corn prices bottom out so low, and people are spending millions of dollars of research to figure out new ways to utilize corn. And I remember my wife's uncle saying, "Why are we planting so much corn? It's worth nothing. It's worth so little that we're burning it for fuel in corn stoves."
Right.
And well, yeah, that's a darn good question. And a lot of those corn acres would probably do well to get out of corn for a year or two, and the next time corn came in, it would be more efficient with fertilizers, there would be fewer pests, and it would be more economical, better net returns that year. Finding out a support system that gets away from just major commodities and somehow lets you do a broader rotation, I think that's what a lot of people have been trying to look at with this EQIP and some of these other programs. I hope it works, because it would be nice, I think, in a lot of places to see a little bit more diversity.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about that. You said EQIP? Is that what you said?
EQIP. Oh yeah, that's...
You don't have to know the acronym, just describe it to me.
EQIP is a program that the Natural Resource Conservation Service is handling, and it is providing support payments for farmers and ranchers to do programs that are increasing soil conservation, water conservation, in some cases as well, plant and animal diversity. And some of these practices are old, some of them are a little bit newer, but people are getting some support to dabble in something new and see how it will work for them, and maybe give it a try enough that they would take it and run with it. And that's been a really nice thing to see, that there's more conservation involved in that, including long-term practices.